and we'll get some people in here. Give that just a second. I'm going to hit go live here on YouTube shortly. Welcome, welcome. See some attendees rolling in.
Nice.
So, as expected. This is good. This is good. All right, I'll hit go live here on YouTube. And we are live. Welcome everyone to Community Office Hours. We've got a special edition for you today. We always have special editions for you. Today we're going to be focused mostly on Waypoint 0.5. So without further ado, I would like to share some things out really quick. For those of you joining via YouTube, I've posted in the chat our code of conduct, which simplifies down to please be excellent to one another. Today, we're going to be covering some fun things and sharing some things out. Would love to engage with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into chat and just be mindful of that code of conduct and being excellent to one another. We'd love to answer your questions as they come up. We have a few that we collected beforehand. My name is Taylor Dolezal, and I'm mostly focused on infrastructure, application delivery, and developer experience here at HashiCorp. And join with me, I'm lucky to be joined by Brian Cain of the Waypoint engineering team. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Brian Cain. I was on the couple previous office hours. Been an engineer at HashiCorp for a little over 4 years. And just recently joined the Waypoint team last year, and it's been fun. It's been a fun thing to work on.
It's been an absolutely incredible tool to really just focus on and iterate when it comes to development. I know coding these demos out for today was really nice to be able to iterate, and yeah, it's really been a fantastic tool. I know I'm biased a little bit, but
yeah,
but I find it quite fun.
Yeah.
When it comes to Waypoint, people using it for the first time, maybe people joining us today that don't really have a handle on what it is, would you be able to give people a deeper insight into what Waypoint is and what problems it helps solves, Brian?
Sure, yeah. So the main thing that Waypoint tries to do is it tries to help you publish your application and on any platform, and we try to make it as simple as possible with a single command. The other nice thing is we kind of have an opinionated workflow for how you might want to deliver your application. And so we call those lifecycle operations. And so you could, build your application, deploy it, and release it. And so that's like the main thing that Waypoint strives for. And just like removing friction for deploying things to these like complex platforms. So, yeah.
I think kind of unpacking that just a little bit is when I hear people talk about Waypoint, a lot of when we try to understand something new, we always try to relate it to something that we already know about. And so when people have talked about Waypoint, and I've discussed it with people in the community, they've typically brought up like, oh, that's just CI/CD. Obviously, working with it, understanding that it's a little bit more than that. Are there some things that really stand out to you that kind of differentiate it from other CI/CD tools, or it's like that's a feature that we have within Waypoint, but there's so much more?
Yeah, I think one thing that's definitely nice is just the ability to work with all of these different platforms with one config file, or just all of the different features we're adding. Like I know today we're going to talk about all the different like status stuff and being able to actually have insight into like what happens when you deploy. And so yeah, it's not just a CI/CD platform like you were saying. Yeah.
Nice. So obviously today we're focused on Waypoint 0.5. Are there any favorite features or workflow additions that have been added that you're particularly excited about?
Totally, yeah. I know we're going to cover these today, but I think one of the cool things we added for this release was input variables. If you're familiar with Packer, Terraform, some of these other HashiCorp tools, you'll know what input variables are, but basically it's another feature that helps you make your configuration more customizable and flexible. And we'll show that off too. And then some other cool things that we recently added. We had status reports a couple of releases ago, and that was around showing the health of your application through a deployment or release. And we've added a lot more to that for 0.5, including showing what resources were created during the deployment, just adding more visibility into what happens when you deploy. So I think that's pretty exciting. Yeah, we've got some other, just in terms of like resource management. One of the cool things we've been adding to all the platforms is an automatic cleanup if a deployment goes wrong. So, you know, if you're in the middle of the deploy, something goes wrong, you don't have dangling resources just hanging around because it didn't complete. And that's all automatic, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's never any fun. It's kind of like, you know, baking in your kitchen, getting stuff together, you know, and then the cleanup operations, never that much fun. And so if we can have the robots do it for us, that's even better.
Totally.
Awesome.
Or if you have like an unfinished batch of brownies that you messed up.
Usually I clean those up. Yeah, I'll fight just about anybody to get those. Or cookie dough. Cookie dough is really good too. Awesome. Well, with that, would like to encourage anybody, if you do have any questions or want to talk about anything related to Waypoint or Waypoint 0.5, please feel free to throw that into chat. And with that, I'd love to kick off one of our first demos here. So let me go ahead and prep everything. I think I have everything I need. Speaking of getting things ready and kind of speaking about a cooking show, I have an EKS cluster here that I've installed Waypoint 2, and I'm pulling that from out underneath the cabinet here. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and load up the Waypoint UI. I promise I will bump up this text because I know that you probably prefer not to have to use a magnifying glass to see that. It's not ideal. Let's see here. Okay, and bounce this around to make this a little bit bigger too. Okay, so here we have this is the Waypoint server. This is, you can denote at the bottom of the screen, I've got Waypoint 0.5. So when you install Waypoint, you can install it, like Brian was talking about, to just about any platform that makes sense for you. Right now, the best ones to use are Docker, ECS, or Kubernetes. I've installed this. You'll note that this is a public endpoint. I have this installed to an EKS cluster that I have set up here. I'm going to go ahead and throw out that one repository really quick for you. There's something I've been working on called EKS in Action. It's a Terraform repository that gets you up and running really quickly with EKS. If you don't want to have to worry about spinning up a VPC in an EKS cluster, this is set up according to some best practices, secrets backed with the KMS key, things like that. As time goes on, we'll make that more and more rugged for production workloads, but really just nice to have something to be able to stamp a demo or prove out a concept for people that are looking for that. There are projects like Kind and other things like that as well, of course. But if you're looking at getting this spun up on a cloud or working with it that way, that is one nice option. Again, biased on that front. So we have Waypoint server installed, and we can see that I've initialized this example Node.js application here. We'll see that I've gone through a couple iterations of these builds, and you might be wondering, what application am I building? Well, I am building out, I'm using the Waypoint examples repository, and I've modified that just a little bit. So let's take a look here. So I have set up my Waypoint file here. You can see the project name at the top. Next comes the configuration block, and this is the magic. Now, this is not a Waypoint 0.5 feature. I believe this came out in Waypoint 0.2. But we got 3 demos to show today, so we're going to be kind of showing you what's happened previously in the series when it comes to Waypoint. So this is dynamic configuration. What I'm doing is I'm setting a message environment variable and an image environment variable, and to kind of illustrate this dynamic configuration. I'm loading this in from Kubernetes as well. I'm loading this in from a config map that I've set within Kubernetes, which I'll show you here shortly. Let me move on though and kind of cover the rest of the Waypoint configuration that I've set up. So we'll see, we're using, again, this example Node.js app. I'm setting some labels here just to kind of get an idea of what I'm actually working with. This is dev, haven't found a stakeholder for this app just yet, but I'm still working on it. And then when it comes to building this out, you'll note that I don't have a Docker file inside of this folder. So what Waypoint's able to do is get you up and running more quickly by using what's called cloud native build packs. So what that does is it allows you to not have a Docker file that you've created. Say that you don't, that's something that you just haven't had the time to learn yet, or just like, you're like, I just want to see if this works. Waypoint's really good at getting up and running and started on that front. So I can proceed forward without having to set a Docker file there, which is nice. I am going to be using Docker Hub to store this image. And then I'm just using some static tags. I was working with this a little bit earlier. I can update this. Waypoint does have the ability to use like a SHA-SUM so that I could change this as my commits roll out. There's a whole bunch of other options that we have available here too, and you can use the registry of your choice. Moving on to deploy. I'm going to be deploying this to Kubernetes because I've set up this Kubernetes cluster, might as well use it, right? So I'm going to be using the probe path just to make sure that that application is alive. And that's going to give us a little bit more context around what Brian was talking about with the status reports too. I'll just briefly point to those in the UI as I get that set up. Lastly, we have our release stanza, and that is, so the difference between deploy and release is that when you deploy an application, you're pushing assets somewhere. You're actually pushing up that version of your application. And what's nice about Waypoint is you can see all of those different variations that you've pushed up. And the release part is actually cutting the traffic over to that so that you can kind of, if you wanted to allot for a canary type of deploy or that style, you have those types of options available to you. They sound like similar words. Typically, they're used interchangeably, but here in Waypoint, they're actually different because release is about where to point the traffic to. Okay. So when it comes to config maps, I have set this up here, and Brian, I got it working. So nice. I have
this GIF there.
It's it's might as well make these demos fun, right?
Yeah.
It's we have hello there, and we've got this Giphy image link, and so let's see what we're working with here and see if we can actually go about changing this. I haven't tried changing it. I noticed there's some caching issues earlier, so that's might as well we'll change that. We'll get that fixed. But we'll
live demo.
It's always fun.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, I should cross my fingers or keep them crossed, but it's hard to type. So the first thing that you do with Waypoint is you're going to want to run init. I've already run that before, but just kind of want to show you what that looks like. Init is going to actually initialize the project inside of the Waypoint UI, as well as make sure that everything is linted, looks good, you don't have any stanzas out of place, and everything is as we expect it to be. So it looks, I see a whole bunch of green. I'm just skimming through this, but it looks like we're good to go. So Waypoint does have a few commands available to you. So I can just go Waypoint up, and it's going to actually go ahead and take care of that build, deploy, and release step. So that's actually what I'm going to do. But you can, one question I get asked quite a bit is, this is great, but what if something goes wrong? What if I want to, hit a button or run some tests or do something in between each of these steps, and I'm using, say, GitHub CI, well, or GitHub Actions. You have that ability to do that. So you can do Waypoint build, it'll take care of that. You can run some tests or checks or do something with that, then go to that deploy step, then go to that release step is one cool pro tip or hack on that front. Quite nice. The goal is to fit into your workflow, right? And so that's kind of why all of these options are available. So let's go ahead and do a Waypoint up, get this deployed. We've pushed this before, so my confidence is pretty high that we're going to be able to actually reference this page and see what's going on. So we can see cloud native build packs are, pushing us to the cloud, which is great to see. This shouldn't take too long to build. We can actually even watch this right within the Waypoint UI. So we can see this V15 building with pack that was less than 20 seconds ago. You can also jump over to these other views to see what's going on, and then nice little icons to kind of denote where we are in this process. So that's quite nice, honestly. So it's pushing to Docker. This should take just a second here. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with my shell, but it's having a good time.
Yeah, I think because the text is so big, looks
that makes sense.
something to fix.
Awesome. So we push to Docker. And so already Brian's going to go kind of more into this, but we can see here that the status checks are reporting back. And so we can see this is ready, this exists. We can see V15 all across the board. And again, what's nice is that with this deployment, we can click on this and use Waypoint's URL service. And we can actually see, oh, look at that. We have our message here at the top, and then we have hello there, which is quite awesome. Nice. So sweet, we did it. If we wanted to go about changing this, we could do that. And that's what we're going to show here with dynamic config. So without me, I'm going to go ahead and keep this GIF just because I haven't found a good one. I like this meme. I want to keep it. Yeah. Maybe I should say hello to Obi-Wan. So let's go ahead and do that. I've already defined this config map in my Kubernetes cluster. Again, I'll just go ahead and show that to you so you can see it. Come on, terminal complete. I'm also using kube control, but I've aliased that to K. So that's the only magic that I have going on here. So that is that's the config map that I have, and that kind of matches what I have pushed up to the cluster. So we can see all the config maps. This is the one that we care about. So let me go ahead and take a look at that. You can see that here. So we see hello there, and then that is that secret message that we put in our dynamic config. So let me go ahead and do this, OB1, and let me go ahead and apply that to the config map. So what's going to happen is we're not actually going to kick off another deployment, which is nice because that would be a really expensive kind of operation, right? So what's actually going to happen is Waypoint is able to watch what we set up as our dynamic configuration. So it's going to actually watch that config map. And as soon as it changes, you'll see right here that it's actually restarting that process. It's not restarting the pod itself. It's actually restarting that process. So you're not going to see that restart on the Kubernetes platform if you were to look for restarts. So we'll wait for this to come back up. It'll say listening on port 3000 once that comes back up. And then we could, we could keep refreshing this. We're going to get the same thing until we actually get that notification that we're back up and running. And we can see and make sure that everything's all right. Awesome. So looks like everything's back up. Let's go ahead and kick off a restart. And we can see hello, Obi-Wan. So we did it. That's demo number 1. If you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to ask in the chat or at us. I won't speak for Brian if you don't want to be added, but yeah, please let us know if you have any questions on this front. Again, this feature came out 0.2, so just kind of want to give you an idea of some fun things that you can do with Waypoint and that were available before, but we're going to get into some more involved things here coming up. One really interesting feature to check out, if you haven't heard, is Waypoint 0.5's OpenID Connect integration. We won't be going through that in too much detail today, just kind of mentioning it. But if you, we have a token system within Waypoint, and now we're further able to implement more rugged and hardened types of integrations with OpenID Connect, whether that be from GitLab or Google or whatever OpenID Connect provider that's your favorite, that you enjoy using, or that your company or team use. So quite a few things to go through there. So that is demo number 1. We'll go ahead and check for some questions and then turn it over to Brian after checking on those fronts.
Cool. Yeah, it could be good to share the OIDC docs too, because there's a lot of there just for setting it up and using it.
Good point. I'll go ahead and grab those. OIDC. Go ahead and put those in the chat. All right, so you should see the OIDC docs that I've posted there. I'm actually going to go ahead and post the blog post here shortly, kind of covering 0.5 and some things on that front too, if you just kind of want to get a 10,000 foot view as to what's going on with Waypoint. There again, there's quite a bit that has come out, and this release is really focused on visibility. Giving people that ability to operate and do things within the UI as well as the CLI. Go ahead and post that blog post. And then let's check questions here. When it comes to contributing to Waypoint, Waypoint's an open source project. So, and with any open source project, it's always a big question that I hear is, how can I contribute? How can I meaningfully contribute? Because, obviously the team here at HashiCorp is working on quite a few things. And it's difficult in an open source space. If you don't call something out or claim ownership or open up an issue, it can be difficult to kind of get a sense as to who's working on what and not stepping on toes, so to speak. So are there any tips that you have, Brian, for kind of like seeing what's coming up with the team or meaningful ways to contribute to the project?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first one, I think, which is something that like anyone could do, which is help us improve our documentation. So as you go through, maybe it's like some of our Learn Guide material, or if you're just trying to get Waypoint set up yourself, if there's something that's unclear in our docs or like could use like a better call out for, or even if there's just like a syntax error, getting that fixed up is a huge help. You could open an issue about it. You could try to fix it up yourself and open a pull request on the Waypoint repo. And docs not only on the Learn Guide and the website, but also things you see when you run the help flag. If you're on the CLI and you run Waypoint up help and you see something that could be improved or clarified, like that's another way to get some contributions in. And we definitely appreciate that, because making it easier for people to use is an important thing to do. So in terms of what's coming up with the team, on GitHub, we have a pretty heavy use of all of the issues, like the whole issue management feature. And we try to be good about putting issues in milestones when they're targeted at a certain release. So if you're curious about like, well, what was in 0.5, you can go look on GitHub and see all of those issues, all those pull requests. And then we try to use like a .x for upcoming things. And so, yeah, if you're curious what's next, you can look at like the 0.5x milestone. But yeah, I mean, other than docs, that we try to also label things like bug or good first issue for people to pick up. So if you see anything on there that looks interesting or something you want to tackle, and it's not assigned to anyone, that's the other things we try to assign it, then like feel free to take it. Try to maybe write a comment to say like, hey, I'm interested in working on this, just so we can maybe give you some assistance. Or, if you have like some bigger, like grand ideas for how you want to contribute, we ask, open an issue and like, or even like post on the discuss forums and tell us what you're thinking. And like, we want to help you out and, help you navigate that. So, yeah.
That's one of the things I've really liked about working here at HashiCorp, Brian, has been that focus on, and you covered it really well, is like a lot of projects there will be that like, oh, I had a shortcoming here, or I really want to be able to do this. And then a lot of, paid for products, when that's the overall focus, it gets kind of muddied. And it's like, I don't want to hear this negative feedback or things like that. But at HashiCorp, it's really embraced, because I feel like you said, working on Vagrant, seeing that from day one, when Mitchell was working on something that immediately was like, this is, VirtualBox is something that's just really difficult to use. I want a more declarative way to instantiate it, and then creating that solution. And then same thing with, Terraform and Vaults and Waypoint. Totally. I really like that, steel, sharpening steel kind of thing with the community, and finding out about everybody's, what could we do to make this easier, and how can we help you out on that front. So again, even if it's something that you aren't able to do, we do want to hear about that. So don't be a stranger. Let us know. We definitely want to help out. Yeah. Always happy to jump on a call and hear about any Waypoint woes, so that we can make them yays, which always a goal. Awesome. Cool. Go ahead and check for any more questions. Looks like no questions just yet. I did see one pop up here a bit earlier. Are there any plans for separating out build, deploy, or release steps within waypoints, like using a predefined image instead of building one?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a little bit of support for that today. Like you mentioned before, we do have a waypoint up command, but we also provide like the separate lifecycle operations with their own commands. So you can run waypoint build, you can run waypoint deploy and release all on their own. Yeah, and it is a common request to say like, well, I already have an image, it's already baked, it's already uploaded to a container registry. And from that stance, we do have some support in our config file for pulling something in and not having to rebuild every time. So yeah, it's getting better. I know in the UI we have some plans to split that up too. So yeah, definitely, it's something we're working on for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. I've really liked that. I know in previous demos, used that Docker pull plugin instead of build for like
Yep.
Minecraft and some other things. But
Yeah.
that's one thing I really like about Waypoint is that ability to use the entry point and then get logs like we had just seen from the previous demo. And then you have the ability to execute things. There are a lot of benefits that you get from that. So that's
Cool.
really quite helpful. Cool.
Cool.
Cool. With that, would love to turn it over to you, Brian, if you'd like to show your demo.
Sure. Yeah, this demo is going to be kind of a collection of a lot of different features. I know we've already kind of shown off GitOps, but that'll be sort of the base of this demo. But I really want to show off all the different status report updates, both in the CLI and UI. So yeah, go ahead and share my screen. All right. How's that looking? That
looks good.
Cool.
No bank account information. Yeah.
No,
looks good.
hopefully not. So yeah, I'm gonna do most of this through the UI just to show off the whole GitOps flow. And one of the projects I'm going to use is our examples repo. If you haven't checked it out, it's you can find it here. Maybe we could drop the link. There's a lot of different platforms that we try to cover here, and it's all pretty basic. We don't have anything too complicated, but the main idea is to like get you started and see what a Waypoint project looks like. I'm going to use this local registry example for Kubernetes because I actually have a cluster running on my machine with Kind. And so Kind on Linux needs a local container registry. We can look at this Waypoint HCL. It's pretty similar to what Taylor was showing. This is my local registry here, and we're going to push it once it gets built. And yeah, so when creating a new project, we can call it whatever you want, but I'll call it example node.js, and we're going to connect this to a Git repository. And I've kind of already done this a couple times, so it's in my history, but we have this Waypoint examples URL here. I'm just going to go off latest because the changes work, and I am going to demo this local registry. And so we're telling Waypoint what's the source path for this Waypoint project. And in this case, it's our local registry example. It's a public project, and so I'm not going to set up any authentication. I'm just going to pull it down and I'm just going to use it. And also, one of the cool things is we're going to have this automatic sync here, which means, if I were to push up some changes to the Git repo, like maybe change an option or change the tag name or whatever you want, Waypoint will automatically on an interval pull in those changes and do a deployment for you. And so I want to hit apply. When that happens, we're gonna go. Have some logs over here, and so in a few seconds you'll be able to see this new project, this new application, and we're actually building. That's really all it took. This is all pack output, and so we're building our Node.js application, and it's just going to kind of go through the whole lifecycle operation for us. It's going to do the build, deploy, release. So I guess we can watch that go. Let's see.
Yeah, if I had thought this out more, I would have had Jeopardy music or something like that to go for you, Brian.
Should have done that. So this output is where I'm actually pushing to my local container registry. So it's already been built, it's pushing that. And so when we deploy, it's going to use that container that we built. It's going to take a little while. It's kind of big. Yeah, we should have got Jeopardy music. But I mean, yeah, so the cool thing about this is I didn't have to have this project locally anywhere. I was able to set this all up through GitHub, and have Waypoint just take care of pretty much all the setup, which is nice.
I feel like it honestly just helps make iteration so quick. And, that to me is, the first 1 to 3 days of any project is like, all right, let's make a Docker container. Let's do this and that, you could say goodbye to that. That's great.
Yeah. All right, looks like we got the deploy step. So it should show up here. All right, there we go. And so one thing I wanted to show off was as this deployment's happening, we do not have a status because we don't have a deployment yet. But in a second, once the deployment's complete, we actually figure out what is the health of the application that we just deployed. You can see it just updated there really quick. We have 2 resources and they're reporting as ready. Our release was successful. And then this is new. As of 0.5.0, we have this rerun health check. And so if it's been a while and you're like, well, what's the status of this app? You can click rerun. And you can see some of that output happening in the background. And there you go. So if I were to kill it, I think actually I was trying this with Kubernetes. Kubernetes is too fast. So if I kill it, it'll just come back up. But you could show like the health report if it does actually go down, then it will show like down or like there's intermittent statuses as well. Some other cool things with this release is we have a new status command on the CLI. And so I don't have this project locally here. This is just the Waypoint source repo. And so we can look at what's the status. And since we're not in a project, this is actually going to show us all of our current projects as stored on Waypoint. And so this example is something we just deployed. We can see it has a couple different statuses for release and deployment. And if we want to dig into that, so this is the project view. We only have 1 app, but if your project had 5 apps, you would see all of those here. And we can see we refreshed that deployment status. And so, if we want to do that again. Just do a quick check. Right, and that was checked 3 seconds ago. It's still up, it's still running. And some more cool features of this release is if we actually dig into the app itself, we get a lot more detail for what we actually deployed. And so that app summary is actually what we saw here. But now we also can get the deployment summary, what platform it was on, what's the artifact ID and image. We're showing resources now. That was one of the things we're talking about where, this deployment ended up creating a deployment in Kubernetes, it created a pod. Those are both reporting ready. And then we also have some release summary too, which is pretty similar. We can see it's the same ID. And so this just gives you another way to get some more insight into what happens with a Waypoint deployment. So yeah. Trying to think if that's really anything else. Yeah.
It's really incredible, and being able to kind of like you're showing, get a more drawn up sense as to what objects were deployed, where are they at. I wish I had that for like performance reports, when it came to that time of the year for our work. But totally. It's like that. We'll talk later. I feel like being able to work, directly within Kubernetes and other platforms, you're able to look at that one service. There are ways to kind of like have that describe operation and look at things in a little bit more drawn up way, but being able to have this within that specific context of this application or that deployment, I think are going to be quite helpful, as we totally. Now and future releases. That should be nice.
And you can also take some of this information and match it against like the kubectl command. Like you can reference that and check for yourself, or it's nice to have more insight. There was one other thing I wanted to cover. I guess it'd be kind of hard to show off, but with some of these GitOps projects and status reports, we've also added, similar to project polling with the data source, we now refresh status reports on an interval. And so by default, it's every 5 minutes. We'll just do that check again, just as if you were to, click this health check button. It's configurable. So if you want it quicker or if you want it slower, you're able to do that through the Waypoint project apply command. And so, yeah, it's nice to see this coming along. There's still a decent amount of work to complete, I guess, this whole vision, but it's nice to see more things being put into place.
Absolutely agree. Can't agree more. And with GitOps, just kind of being able to push those things up and see it all roll out.
Totally. Cool. I think that's what I got.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Brian. That is demo number 2. We definitely liked keeping our hat trick theme and trying to get 3 demos together. We have one coming up here shortly, but did have a few more questions that came up. Cool. One funny comment that came up in chat, not a question, but an observation. Does the Waypoint logo remind anyone else of the Wayland-Yutani Corporation logo from the Alien franchise? Yes. Which I responded, we'll talk to the design team and see if that was intentional or not.
Hopefully not as evil as that corporation.
Yeah, we haven't been to the San Francisco office yet, but we haven't heard any adverse reports based on the status reports that Brian just showed. So. Awesome. One question that I had was Waypoint 0.5 introduced OpenID Connect, which is awesome to have that functionality. Do you know what kind of system setup that it had before? I remember seeing something about a token system, but didn't know if you had any more details on that front.
I don't have too many details, but I do know that the main use case for that was what was it, like a machine-oriented access? Whereas like OIDC is more for like your user, like human facing token system. But yeah, you end up getting both. And so the OIDC was more of just like an enhancement on top of that.
Cool. It'll be nice to see that, as well as have the auditability. I know that's not there today to be able to do things, but it's nice to be able to have that insight once that's set up as to who did what and getting more insight on that front. So that's good.
Yeah, we're getting there for sure. Yeah, it'll be exciting.
It's nice that it wasn't released either without an auth system altogether as well. Just secure day one is always a plus.
Yes.
Cool. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those into chat and we'll get to those. Other than that, I don't see anything just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed to our next demo, which is our and one more thing type of demo provided by Brian. So let's get this going for this here. One. I'm stoked. Okay, let's see if I can remember all the steps here. So live demo yet again, but I think we got this one. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and what's the best way to do this? I'm still learning these commands too. So I think it's repo view w. We'll pull using the GitHub CLI is going to go ahead and pull that open in your browser, which it did.
That's cool.
So that's nice. I always forget I just go view, but obviously it doesn't always work. So this is a project written by Brian. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab this URL and share it with you. If you want to follow along at home, I'm putting that in the YouTube chat. This is quite an interesting project. I'm not going to give away too much because that's the punchline is the big reveal. So we're going to go ahead and show that here shortly. So you'll notice that there are 2 different variations that Brian's created for this as well. We have a Docker one. Today we'll be using the Kubernetes one. So we'll go ahead and get this set up.
Yeah, and the Kubernetes one for this demo, we want to show off input variables. And so like if you show off that Waypoint HCL, we've kind of coded out some different things that you might want to customize for a project, like maybe the tag or like the image name, whether or not you're going to push to a registry. And so they're all kind of defined in line in this Waypoint HCL.
So this is going to be nice. And clearly I can't just use these out of the box, but what's nice is the fact that I can configure them, right? So I think that let me go ahead and figure out my screens. I've almost gotten them figured out. I've almost learned how to computer, but not 100% just yet. Cool. So you'll notice that, and I can do this through the CLI, but obviously just for demo's sake, a lot easier to show you here in the UI. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and define some of those variables. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this up just to make sure that I have everything configured the way that I want to. So when it comes to tag, this should be okay. Not in production, of course. Latest is never best in production, but I think we're fine to leave that as is today. When it comes to image, that's something that we will want to change. I'm going to go ahead and do a, instead of just Tetris, I'm going to want to go ahead and do my only Dole. And I believe that's it. Might be colon, but that's a live demo. We'll find out here shortly.
That'll push to Docker Hub, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Cool.
So it should be good there. Registry local. I'm going to go ahead and grab this variable. That's actually going to be false because we're, just like Brian said, we're going to be pushing to Docker Hub, and I'll go ahead and spell false correctly. Release port is going to be okay at 3000 as well. That's just going to link our deployment to that port of 3000. Should be okay. And yeah, that should cover all of our input variables. So as you can see, this is a great way to stub out different functionality. And this works, if you want to run things locally, if you want to run things remotely, you can kind of create this template now that you will have to set up your project settings for, but at the end of the day, not a bad cost to ask for when we can go ahead and do this and make it a far more modular setup for the people that we work with. So
it's nice that at least in the HCL, you have like, what should the type be? What's the default? And like, what's some documentation for? Like, it's nice, for your team to be able to see that and have some expectation for like, what should this variable be?
And again, providing that visibility so that we know, what is actually literally what is going into a release, which is really, really helpful to know. Cool. We'll see here that, so this should look somewhat familiar from previous demos. We have our application Tetris ready to go. Building, we're using Docker for the registry, Docker Hub. You'll note that var.image tag registry local is what we're using from the input variables from above. Deploy, this looks similar to our first demo and deploying to Kubernetes. We've got our probe path here. And then this final release, we're actually pushing this to a load balancer. So y'all are going to have access to this once it's up and running, which is going to be the exciting part. And then the port is the release port. So let's go ahead, and I think I got everything correct, but let's go ahead and
find out.
Already done in init, so we don't need to worry about that. Go ahead and build this.
This one's quick too. It just copies, the static site onto a Nginx config. So most of the waiting is pushing. Yeah.
It's like, there we go. Already deploying. Yeah. My apologies. I didn't let you see that in the Waypoint UI while my CLI is doing some dancing. So we'll go ahead and wait for that to get pushed up, and then I'll go ahead and share that in the chat here on YouTube, so you can all take a look at it before I actually show it on my screen.
This is on EKS, you said.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. EKS, US West 2. So it's going to be in Oregon. I could have done like a local zone. I'm in LA. I could have pushed it, just down the street somewhere, but that's we'll figure that out another day.
You pushed it to me because I'm in Oregon.
just wanted to have that fast load time, Brian.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go ahead and paste this into the chat. Oh shoot! It doesn't allow me to do that. So alas, we'll find some other way to
just
share
type
this. Or
A32. No.
It's like, hurry, go. So
it's YouTube that's not letting you paste it.
It's always so sad. So okay, I think it might just be the wonder if it might be that release port, and it might be okay with 80, but let me go ahead and check here. I can take a look and see what's going on with Kubernetes.
Yeah, this is good. Live debugging.
All right, so we see Tetris. That's all good.
They're running.
let's go ahead and get the services and take a look at the wide representation there. There's Tetris. That should, whoops. Yeah, that is not loading up for me for some odd reason, but I might be able to.
Oh, there we go.
Cheat
that's
with
your
this.
local, yeah.
So this is something I could take a look at here in just a little bit. It might also be just provisioning this and waiting for the target group to come up. Yeah, there goes.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, just
like hey.
just AWS waking up. Yeah, this is provided by a JavaScript library called BlockRain, which is like really nice to add. So, and you can stare at your website while it plays Tetris.
Yeah, how much time do we have left? 15 minutes. We're just gonna sit here and stare at this. So thank you for coming. No. would make a really incredible screensaver. I've heard rumors about the next iPhone having an always-on screen, so maybe they'll support screensavers and you could use this. But yeah, pure conjecture. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is incredible. This is nice. So yeah, if you for anyone out there that wants to use Waypoint to create an MMORPG, please let us know. You know, we'd love to take a look at
that. Would be cool.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that concludes the demo. Hope that you enjoy this. Obviously, please feel free to check out Brian's repository and spin this up on your own. Really an interesting demo and just honestly a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, if y'all weren't here with us, I'd just spend the rest of my day doing this. If you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I did have a few to close things out. One of them was, so we've seen today all of the workflows in which Waypoint has really delivered well. Are there any workflows that don't work well with Waypoint at the current point in time, or things that just might not really have been, it's just not really geared for that just yet?
Totally. Yeah, right now we don't have much support for like the virtual machine workflow. And I know some of the plans we have eventually is like we could have a Packer builder for like the build step, and so we have some of those issues on our horizon. But yeah, I would say virtual machines is one thing that we don't really do yet. It's definitely like a container focused tool.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I think that's something that I kind of noticed too, in terms of I've worked with Nomad just a little bit, obviously working in the Kubernetes space and interacting with people there, very, very biased and kind of focusing on those workloads and workflows. But working with Nomad has been really interesting too, and eye-opening, and how schedulers work and orchestration is done, and kind of getting a sense for Nomad being different and kind of orchestrating those binaries and different types of workloads beyond containerization. So really, I've enjoyed that context, because that's not normally what you see. And so being able to see containerization as kind of like being the core component for Waypoint is also very interesting. Both ends of that spectrum of deployment. So quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, curious to see where it goes.
I was gonna say, like, that's another interesting like contribution someone could make, is if they have ideas for like a virtual machine workflow, let us know. Yeah, I'd like to hear from you.
We already have AWS Lambda supported, and
That's
Google
true.
Run, and those are really cool too. I think that's something I've talked to some others on the Waypoint team about is right now we have AWS Lambda with the expectation that service is going to be up and running all the time. But if you want, say, like a cron job or something like that, that to be the trigger, that's another type of workflow. So it's still early days for Waypoint. There's still a lot of innovation and things to happen on that front. I'm also, I've also got like on my bingo card for Waypoint, 1.0 WASM support and some other fun things like that. So I'll bug you about that after the call. But.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll check here for any more questions. Looks like pretty quiet, but thank you all so much for showing up today and joining us in all of this fun with Waypoint 0.5. We hope that you enjoyed it. Brian, thank you so much for coming by and for working on Tetris. I know that you've been working on that high score for a while, but it looks like you just hit 40,000.
That's pretty good
over here. So.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Oh, this is awesome. But yeah, catch us next time. We'll let you know when we have some Waypoint 0.6 stuff, some other Waypoint 0.5 and 0x workflows really to go through. Always a fun time here talking about Waypoint. Thank you all for showing up and joining us today. And yeah, we hope to see you again soon. Let us know if you need anything in the meantime. Raise up an issue, a PR, or at us on the internet, and we'll be happy to get back to you on those fronts. So thank you very much. Have a good one, everybody.